The Montauk Blind Horizon Part 1, The Abyssal Predator. Sloane Vance lived her life in the clean, predictable world of predictive code. From her minimalist, high-rise apartment in Long Island City, she engineered autonomous maritime defense systems for the eastern seaboard. To Sloane, the chaotic waters of the Atlantic Ocean were just a series of fluid dynamics equations waiting to be solved. She was sharp, impeccably tailored, and entirely shielded behind her pristine Ivy League credentials tonight. She was 20 miles off the coast of Montauk, trapped inside an experimental subsurface naval command pod anchored to the continental shelf. She was conducting a final stress test on her masterpiece, the Blind Horizon AI, an autonomous submarine tracking grid designed to police the deep ocean trenches without human intervention. Leo Rossi, however, belonged to the water. Leo was a gritty, fiercely intuitive deep-sea salvage specialist born and raised in a family of Staten Island docks. He didn't trust algorithms, and he certainly didn't trust tech executives from Manhattan. He knew the volatile currents of the Hudson Canyon, the treacherous shifting sands of the Atlantic shelf, and how a sudden deep-water thermal layer could trick even the most advanced sonar. He used technology as a tool, but he navigated by soul. Your automated grid is dangerously clinical. Dr. Vance, Leo said, leaning against the steel bulkhead of the submerged pod. His arms crossed over a grease-stained thermal shirt. His voice was a low, Brooklyn-edged rasp that scraped against her nerves. The computer treats the ocean floor like a simulation. It doesn't understand the raw, unpredictable weight of a shifting deep-sea trench. Sloane didn't look up from her dual-screen console, her fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard. The algorithm processes 3 million data packets per second, Mr. Rossi. It eliminates human error. Your reliance on gut instinct is a relic of the past. Leo let out a low, dry chuckle, stepping into her immediate peripheral vision. He smelled of sea salt, hydraulic fluid, and the heavy wool of his deck jacket. He was a massive, weathered presence that made the high-tech, pressurized pod feel incredibly claustrophobic. Well, Doc, that human error is exactly what keeps you alive when the deep water decides to push back. Part 2. The blackout loop pushback arrived with terrifying speed. A sudden, unpredicted seismic shift along the underwater canyon wall triggered a massive subsurface mudslide. The cascading wall of silt and rock slammed directly into the pod's external sensor array, fed a sudden deluge of corrupted data. The Blind Horizon AI didn't adapt, it panicked, interpreting the environmental anomaly as a hostile acoustic attack. The automated system initiated an emergency defensive lockdown inside the pod. The primary monitors erupted into a blinding flash of neon crimson alerts. Critical blockade engaged. Blind Horizon loop tactical status. Communications isolated. Automated protocol. Initiating abyssal lockdown. Ballast tanks. Recovery pumps disabled. A heavy, terrifying groan of pressurized steel echoed through the hull as the automated system cut all hardlines to the surface, plunging the interior into a shadow-filled darkness lit only by the aggressive pulsing of the red emergency strobes. The climate control system whined down to a dead stop, and the air instantly began to grow heavy and cold. Sloane's primary command feeds went entirely black. Her tablet screen flashed a sterile, devastating message. Connected latch failure. The system completely sealed us in, Sloane said, her voice fracturing as a wave of primal panic hit her chest. It's trapped in a closed logic loop. It thinks we're under attack, so it disabled the manual ballast blowers. We are pinned to the seafloor. I told you the machine lacked a pulse, Leo said. His casual demeanor vanished, replaced instantly by a quiet, absolute authority. He grabbed a heavy emergency flashlight from the bulkhead, its beam cutting through the crimson gloom. The surface crew won't even know we're down here until the morning check-in. The air is going to turn toxic in a few hours if we don't dump these tanks manually. We can't, Sloane whispered, her hands shaking against the dead console. The manual bypass requires a physical synchronization of the dual hydraulic valves beneath the floor plates, but the digital telemetry is dead. We can't see the pressure balance. Then we stop looking at screens, Leo said, his eyes narrowing in the dark. And we start feeling the metal. Part 3. The thermal sink cold inside the pod became visceral and aggressive. A freezing weight that forced its way into their lungs. Yet, beneath the heavy wool blankets they threw over their shoulders, the air between them grew thick and suffocatingly hot. Sloane's chest heaved, her breathing shallow, her skin flushing a deep pink under the flashing red strobes. Stripped of her corporate armor and her data models, she felt exposed, raw, and entirely defenseless. Leo ripped away the central deck plate, exposing the massive, dual mechanical levers of the hydraulic ballast system. He stepped directly into her personal space, his large hands catching her trembling shoulders, pulling her down into the cramped, dark recess beneath the console. The physical friction between them was electric. A raw chemistry born of pure survival. Sloane. "Look at me," Leo commanded, his face inches from hers in the cramped dark. The heat radiating from his body was an anchor. "The AI is blind, but we aren't. I need your mathematical brain to calculate the timing intervals, and you need my strength to pull the iron. We sink or swim together. Look at me and breathe." Sloane looked at the hard line of his jaw, the absolute, unyielding protective instinct in his eyes. The static in her mind cleared, replaced by a sudden, white-hot focus. "Tell me what to do." They wedged themselves together into the narrow space beneath the floorboards, their bodies forced into a tight, flush alignment. Every movement was a tactile collision, the rough denim of his thighs pressing against her bare legs, the heavy, rhythmic heat of his breathing mixing directly with hers. "The manual says we have to throw both levers at the exact same microsecond, or the pressure differential will crack the hydraulic lines," Leo muttered, his chest pressing hard against her shoulder as his large, calloused hand wrapped completely over hers on the freezing steel lever. The contrast was stunning, her soft, elegant fingers locked entirely beneath his rough, powerful grip. "I can't see the telemetry clock." "Leo," she whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Don't look for the clock," Leo murmured, his voice a low, gravelly vibration that traveled straight through her spine. He shifted his weight, pulling her back against his chest, anchoring her body completely within his own. "Close your eyes. Feel my chest. When my heart hits the rhythm, we pull." Sloane closed her eyes, letting go of the code, letting go of the predictive metrics. In the pitch black of the Atlantic floor, wrapped in his arms, she allowed her entire nervous system to lock onto his physical presence. Inhale. She felt the slow, powerful expansion of his chest against her back. Think. The absolute, unshakable heat of his skin erasing the freezing terror of the abyss. Pulse. His heart hit a steady, heavy cadence against her shoulder blade. The intimacy was raw, overwhelming, and deeply passionate. In that dark capsule, surrounded by thousands of tons of ocean water, their separate worlds dissolved into one single, synchronized organism. Sloane turned her head slightly, her lips brushing the rough stubble of his jawline. Leo didn't hesitate. His grip on her hand tightened, and he turned his face, his mouth meeting hers in a fierce, desperate kiss. It was a collision of Manhattan intellect and Montauk gritted deep, unyielding surrender to the beautiful, unpredictable chaos of the present moment. Now he groaned against her lips. Together, using their combined weight, they threw the massive mechanical levers forward. Part 4. The surfacing with a deafening, explosive hiss of releasing pneumatic pressure. The heavy hydraulic valves popped open. The sound of rushing water roared through the pipes beneath them as the ballast tanks violently emptied, forcing the trapped air back into the chambers. The pod shuddered violently, breaking free from the section of the mudslide, and began a rapid, rocket-like ascent toward the surface of the sea. They broke through the crest of the Atlantic waves with a massive splash, the pod rocking safely on the rolling ocean swells. The automated emergency hatches automatically unlatched, letting in the crisp, freezing, and wonderfully clean morning air of the tri-state coast. The sky above the horizon was a brilliant, bleeding streak of amber and gold, illuminating the distant, reassuring blink of the Montauk lighthouse. Sloane and Leo climbed out onto the exterior observation deck, wrapping a single, shared heavy wool blanket tightly around their shoulders. The digital noise of her high-tech world was still dead, but for the first time in her life, Sloane didn't care about the connection. She looked up at Leo, his face covered in grease and sea salt. His eyes bright and completely clear. The system is completely offline, Sloane said softly. A genuine, beautiful smile breaking across her face. There are no metrics out here, Leo smiled, his large arms sliding around her waist, pulling her flesh against his side as the morning sun warmed their skin. The ocean is perfectly clear. Doc, let's keep it that way. He pulled her back into his arms, his mouth finding hers again in a deep, lingering kiss that tasted of the wild Atlantic spray, the raw warmth of the morning, and a beautiful, permanent horizon that no algorithm could ever predict.